felt eyes on me I couldn't place, until I knew whose they were. It was a typical Monday morning at Sterling & Associates. The office hummed with the usual chaos, phones ringing off the hook, keyboards clacking like a staccato drumbeat, and the faint, comforting scent of coffee drifting from the break room. I wove through the maze of cubicles, my heels tapping softly on the polished floor, and dropped into my chair with a quiet sigh. Another day, another shot at proving I belonged here. I've been a marketing coordinator at this firm for almost 2 years now. It's a job I clawed my way into, and I'm dead set on climbing higher, past the glass ceilings and whispered doubts. But lately, my ambition's been tangled up in something else, something I can't quite shake. As if summoned by my thoughts, there he was. Liam Carter, our department head. He stood by the conference room door, his tall frame cutting a sharp silhouette against the frosted glass. Liam was the picture of corporate Polish. A tailored suit hugging his broad shoulders, dark hair styled just so, and an air of quiet command that made people sit up straighter. But it wasn't his title or his crisp professionalism that got under my skin. It was something else, something warmer, softer, that flickered in his eyes when no one else was looking. Everyone knew he was married. His wife, Sarah, popped by the office now and then, all bright smiles and easy charm. She'd chat with the team, drop off a coffee for him, and leave with a wave that said they had it all figured out. They were the perfect couple, or so it seemed, which made the way my pulse jumped around him feel all the more wrong. That morning, we had a team meeting. The conference room buzzed with the usual crowd. 15 of us crammed around a long table, sipping lukewarm coffee and pretending to care about quarterly goals. Liam stood at the front, clicking through slides with a steady hand. He had this way of making even budget stats sound compelling, his voice smooth and sure, his gaze sweeping the room. Then it landed on me. "Emma, that presentation you put together last week was outstanding," he said, his tone professional but warm. The clients were impressed, and so was I. My cheeks heated up, and I forced a calm smile. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I'm glad it worked out." But as I gathered my notes and stood to leave, I caught him watching me. His eyes lingered, a second too long maybe, and my stomach flipped. Was I imagining it? Projecting my own mess of feelings onto a man who was supposed to be off limits? Over lunch, I spilled it all to Zoe, my best friend, and the one person who'd never sugarcoat the truth. We sat at the cafe downstairs, her latte steaming between us. "You need to watch yourself, Em," she said, stirring her drink with a frown. "Office romances are a disaster waiting to happen, especially with a married guy." "I know," I groaned, picking at my salad. "It's just, there's something about him. I can't pin it down." "Well, pin it down or not, you don't want that kind of reputation. Trust me, homewrecker isn't a cute nickname around here." She was right. I knew she was. But knowing didn't stop the way my mind kept drifting back to him, replaying that look, that spark. That evening, I stayed late to polish a project. The office had emptied out, the usual racket fading into a heavy silence. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting long shadows across the rows of desks. I was just about to shut down my laptop when I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. Emma burning the midnight oil again? It was Liam. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows, and he looked different. Less like the untouchable boss and more like someone I could reach out and touch. "Just tying up some loose ends, Mr. Carter," I said, my voice steady despite the sudden thump of my heart. "Please, call me Liam." He smiled, a small, tired curve of his lips. "We're not that formal here, especially after hours." He stepped closer, close enough that I caught a hint of his cologne. Something woodsy and understated. The air between us thickened, charged with a tension I couldn't name. I should have stepped back, made an excuse, left. But I didn't. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A shadow shifting in the hallway beyond the glass wall. Someone was out there watching us from the dark. What happens next? Subscribe for more to find out. My breath caught as I squinted into the dim hallway. The shadow shifted, and then Zoe stepped into the light, her expression unreadable. Relief washed over me, followed by a sharp pang of anxiety. Zoe, my best friend, the one person I trusted with everything. But now, she'd seen us, Liam and me, alone after hours, the air thick with something unspoken. "Zoe," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "What are you still doing here?" She glanced between Liam and me, her brow furrowing. "I could ask you the same thing, Em." Liam cleared his throat, stepping back with a casual smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just wrapping up some work. Emma's been a huge help with the new campaign." Zoe's gaze lingered on me, skeptical. "Right. Well, don't stay too late. You know how this place gets after dark." She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing down the hall. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Liam's hand brushed my arm, a fleeting touch that sent a shiver through me. "We should probably call it a night," he said softly. "Don't want to give anyone the wrong idea," but as I packed up my things, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was already too late. The next morning, I tried to act normal, but Zoe's knowing look weighed on me like a lead blanket. At lunch, she pulled me aside, her voice low and urgent. "Emma, what the hell was that last night? You and Liam, alone, after hours. You're playing with fire." I picked at my sandwich, avoiding her eyes. "It's not what you think. We were just working." "Bullshit," she snapped. "I saw the way he looked at you, and the way you looked back. This isn't just work, and you know it." Her words stung because they were true. I did know it. But admitting it out loud felt like crossing a line I wasn't ready for. "I can handle it, Zoe. It's under control." She sighed, her expression softening. "Just be careful, okay? You've worked too hard to throw it all away." I nodded, but deep down, I wasn't sure if I believed her or myself. That afternoon, Liam called me into his office. My heart raced as I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. He was leaning against his desk, arms crossed, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Emma, I wanted to talk to you about the upcoming project. I think you'd be perfect to lead it." "Me?" I blinked, surprised. "But I'm just a coordinator. Isn't that more of a senior role?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You're more than capable. And I trust you." There, it was again. That spark, that pull. His eyes held mine, and for a moment, the world outside his office ceased to exist. I could feel the heat radiating from him, the scent of his cologne wrapping around me like a forbidden promise. "Thank you, Liam," I murmured. "I won't let you down." His hand reached out, fingers grazing mine as he handed me a folder. The touch lingered, deliberate, and my pulse quickened. "I know you won't." Back at my desk, I tried to focus, but my mind kept replaying that moment. The way his fingers felt against mine, the intensity in his gaze. It was reckless, I knew, but the thrill of it was intoxicating. That's when I noticed Aiden watching me from across the room. Aiden was the office's golden boy, charming, ambitious, and always one step ahead. He flashed me a smile, but there was something calculating in his eyes, something that made my skin prickle. Later, as I was leaving for the day, he cornered me by the elevator. "Hey, Emma, heard you're taking on the new project. Congrats." "Thanks," I said, forcing a smile. "It's a big opportunity, Yeah, it is. He leaned in, his voice lowering. Just watch your back, all right? Not everyone's as supportive as they seem. Before I could ask what he meant, the elevator doors opened, and he stepped inside, leaving me with a gnawing sense of unease. That evening, I stayed late again, determined to get a head start on the project. Liam had offered to help, and soon, we were alone in the office once more. The tension between us was palpable, thickening with every shared glance, every accidental touch. As we reviewed the files, our shoulders brushed, and I felt a jolt of electricity. Liam turned to me, his eyes dark and unreadable. Emma, there's something I need to tell you. My heart pounded. What is it? He hesitated, then reached out, his hand cupping my cheek. I can't stop thinking about you. Before I could respond, his lips were on mine, soft, tentative, then deepening with a hunger that matched my own. I melted into him, all thoughts of caution dissolving in the heat of the moment. But just as quickly, the sound of the door creaking open shattered the spell. We sprang apart, breathless, as Aiden stepped into the room. "Oh, sorry," he said, his tone dripping with false innocence. "I forgot my phone. Didn't mean to interrupt." Liam straightened, his face a mask of composure. "No problem, Aiden. We were just finishing up." Aiden's eyes flicked between us, a sly smile tugging at his lips. "Of course, have a good night." As he left, the air felt colder, heavier. I turned to Liam, but the moment was gone, replaced by a creeping dread. The next morning, I found it on my desk, a plain white envelope with my name scrawled across it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the words typed in bold, black letters. "I know what's going on between you and Liam. Be careful." My blood ran cold. Someone knew. And they were watching. Who could it be? Aiden? Zoe? Or someone else entirely? Subscribe to find out what happens next. The note sat in my hands, the words, "I know what's going on between you and Liam. Be careful." Burning into my mind. My stomach twisted, and I glanced around the office, suddenly hyper-aware of every face, every movement. Who could have sent this? Aiden, with his sly smile and cryptic warning. Zoe, trying to protect me in her own way. Or someone else entirely. I shoved the note into my drawer, my hands trembling. I needed to focus, but my thoughts kept spiraling. If this got out, it wouldn't just ruin my career. It could destroy Liam's too. And his marriage. The weight of it pressed down on me, suffocating. At lunch, I tried to act normal, but Zoe noticed something was off. "Em, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's going on?" I hesitated, then pulled her aside. "Someone knows, Zoe. About me and Liam." Her eyes widened. "What? How?" I showed her the note, and she cursed under her breath. "This is bad. You need to end this, Emma. Now." "I know," I whispered, but the words felt hollow. Ending. It wasn't that simple. Not when every part of me ached to be near him. That afternoon, Liam called me into his office again. The door clicked shut behind me, and the air between us crackled with tension. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes. But when he saw me, a small smile tugged at his lips. "Emma, I've been thinking about last night," he said, his voice low. "I shouldn't have crossed that line. It was reckless." My heart sank. "So, what are you saying?" He stepped closer, his hand brushing my arm. "I'm saying I don't regret it, but we need to be careful. There's too much at stake." I nodded, relief and fear warring inside me. "Someone already knows Liam. I got a note this morning." His face paled. "What did it say?" I I told him, and he swore softly. We need to find out who sent it. If this gets out... I know, I said, my voice shaking. But how? He thought for a moment, then said, let's keep our distance for a while. Act like nothing's changed. Maybe they'll think it was a one-time thing. It made sense, but the idea of pulling away from him felt like a punch to the gut. Still, I agreed. We had no choice. For the next few days, I threw myself into work, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. Liam and I exchanged polite nods in the hallway, but nothing more. It was torture, pretending he was just my boss again, when every fiber of my being wanted to be close to him. But the note wasn't the end of it. Strange things started happening. Files I'd saved disappeared from my computer. Emails I'd sent never reached their recipients. And then, during a team meeting, Aiden brought up a mistake in the project I was leading. A mistake I knew I hadn't made. Emma, the numbers in your report don't add up, he said, his tone dripping with false concern. Did you double-check them? I stared at the screen, my stomach dropping. The figures were wrong, completely off, but I'd checked them a dozen times. I don't understand. They were correct when I submitted them. Liam's eyes met mine, a flicker of worry crossing his face. Let's review it after the meeting, Emma. We'll sort it out. But the damage was done. Whispers spread through the office, and I could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on me. Someone was sabotaging me, and I had a sinking feeling I knew who. That evening, I stayed late again, determined to fix the report. The office was empty, the silence oppressive. As I worked, I heard footsteps approaching. My heart raced, but it was just Liam. Emma, you shouldn't be here alone, he said, his voice soft. I had to fix this, I replied, frustration bubbling up. Someone's messing with my work, Liam. I think it's Aiden. He frowned. Aiden? Why would he do that? I don't know. Maybe he's the one who sent the note. Maybe he's trying to get me fired. Liam's jaw tightened. I'll talk to him. This stops now. But before he could say more, the door swung open, and Sarah, Liam's wife, stepped into the room. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene. Liam and me, alone, after hours. Liam, what's going on here? Her voice was sharp, laced with suspicion. Liam stepped back, his face a mask of calm. Just helping Emma with a project. There was a mix-up with the report. Sarah's gaze flicked to me, cold and assessing. I see. Well, don't let me interrupt. I just came to drop off your dinner. She set a bag on his desk, her movements stiff. Then, without another word, she turned and left. The door clicked, shut behind her, and the silence that followed was deafening. Liam ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. That was close. Too close, I whispered. Maybe we should stop this, Liam, before it's too late. He turned to me, his eyes blazing. Is that what you want? I opened my mouth to say yes, but the word wouldn't come. Instead, I shook my head. No, but I don't know how much longer we can keep this up. He pulled me into his arms, his lips brushing my forehead. We'll figure it out, Emma. I promise. But as I leaned into him, I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The next morning, I found another note on my desk. This one was different, handwritten, the letters sharp and angry. Meet me in the parking garage at 7 p.m. Come alone or everyone finds out. My blood ran cold. This was it, the moment of truth. I had to find out who was behind this, once and for all. As the day dragged on, my nerves frayed. When 7 p.m. finally rolled around, I made my way to the parking garage, my heart pounding in my chest. The place was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the concrete. I scanned the area, but it was empty. Then, from behind a pillar, a figure stepped out. My breath caught as I recognized them. It was Sarah. She stood there, her face pale and drawn, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and pain. "Emma," she said, her voice trembling. "We need to talk." What happens next? Subscribe for more to find out. Sarah stood in front of me, her face a mask of barely contained emotion. The dim light of the parking garage cast shadows across her features, making her look both fragile and fierce. My heart pounded in my chest, and for a moment, I couldn't find my voice. "Sarah," I finally managed, my throat dry. What do you want to talk about?" She let out a bitter laugh, her eyes flashing. "Don't play dumb, Emma. I'm not an idiot. I've seen the way you look at him, the way he looks at you." I swallowed hard, guilt crashing over me like a wave. "It's not what you think." "Stop," she cut me off, her voice trembling. "Just stop. I found the messages, Emma. On his phone. Late nights at the office, working on projects. I know what's been going on." My stomach dropped. Messages? I hadn't even realized Liam had been texting me outside of work. The realization hit me like a punch. How careless we'd been. How blind. "I didn't mean for this to happen," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you." Sarah's expression softened, just for a second, before hardening again. "But you did. You both did." She took a step closer, her voice low and fierce. "I'm giving you a choice, Emma. End this now, walk away, and I won't say a word. But if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows, including HR, the SAR." Threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I nodded, unable to speak, and watched as she turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the concrete. Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, my mind spinning. Sarah's words echoed in my head, but so did Liam's, his promises, his touch, the way he made me feel seen in a way no one else ever had. I was trapped between desire and decency, and I didn't know which way to turn. The next morning, I walked into the office with a sense of dread. Liam was already there, his door ajar. I could see him pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. When he spotted me, he hung up and motioned for me to come in. "Emma," he said, his voice strained. "Sarah knows. She confronted me last night." I nodded, my throat tight. "She talked to me too. She gave me an ultimatum. End this or she'll expose us." Liam's face paled. He sank into his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I never wanted it to come to this. I thought I could keep things separate." "Separate?" I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping me. "Liam, we're not separate. We're tangled up in each other's lives, and now it's falling apart." He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mix of longing and regret. "What do you want, Emma? Do you want to end this?" The question hung between us, heavy with implication. I opened my mouth to say yes, to do the right thing, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I shook my head. I don't know. I don't know what I want anymore." Liam stood, crossing the room in 2 strides. He cupped my face in his hands, his touch gentle but urgent. "I can't lose you," he whispered, "but I can't lose her either. I'm stuck, Emma." Before I could respond, the door burst open. Aiden stood there, his face twisted in a smirk. Well, isn't this cozy?" Liam stepped back, his hands dropping to his sides. "Aiden, this isn't the time." "Oh, I think it is," Aiden interrupted, his voice dripping with malice. "You see, I've been watching you two for weeks, and I've got proof, photos, messages, everything. I was going to use it to get Emma fired, but this is even better. My blood ran cold. What do you want, Aiden? He grinned, his eyes gleaming. Simple. I want your job, Liam. Step down, recommend me as your replacement, and I'll keep your dirty little secret. Refuse, and I'll send everything to HR and the board. Liam's jaw clenched, his fists tightening. You're blackmailing me? Call it what you want. Aiden shrugged. You've got until the end of the day to decide. With that, he turned and left, the door slamming shut behind him. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Liam and I barely spoke, both of us lost in our own turmoil. By the time the office emptied out, I felt like a ghost, drifting through the motions. That evening, Liam called me into his office one last time. His face was drawn, his eyes tired. I've made a decision, he said quietly. I'm going to step down. My heart sank. Liam, no, you can't. I have to. He cut me off. If I don't, Aiden will ruin us both. And Sarah, she deserves better than this. Better than me. Tears welled up in my eyes. What about us? He smiled sadly, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from my face. Maybe in another life, Emma. But not this one. I wanted to argue, to fight, for him. But deep down, I knew he was right. This, whatever it was, had been a mistake from the start. A beautiful, intoxicating mistake. But a mistake nonetheless. The next morning, Liam announced his resignation, citing personal reasons. The office buzzed with shock and speculation. But no one knew the truth, except Aiden, who slid into Liam's role with a smug grin. As for me, I threw myself into my work, trying to forget the ache in my chest. Zoe was there for me, as always, offering a shoulder to cry on, and a stern reminder that I deserved better. Weeks passed, and slowly, the pain began to fade. I learned to live with the choices I'd made, the lessons I'd learned. And though I never saw Liam again, I carried a piece of him with me, a reminder of what happens when you let desire cloud your judgment. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wonder what might have been if things had been different. But then I'd remember Sarah's face, the hurt in her eyes, and I'd know that some lines aren't meant to be crossed. What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.